Today we return to the land of Hyrule to take another look at the Legend of Zelda timeline. And by that I mean multiverse, because I'm right and Nintendo is wrong. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, where cherry picking isn't a fallacy, it's a way of life. One of the most popular discussion pieces in the Zelda fandom is the timeline. For those of you who don't know, while games in the Zelda series are rarely direct sequels to each other, they all exist in a shared multiverse, many years apart. For a while, it was up to the fans to determine how games fit in the Zelda chronology. That is, until Nintendo released the Hyrule Historia, a book that included the official chronology of the Zelda universe. To their credit, the timeline seems complete, even featuring spin-off games like Four Swords Adventures and the Oracle Duology. However, there are a trio of Zelda games that are glaringly absent from this chronology. I am, of course, talking about the games for the Philips CDI: Link, The Faces of Evil, Zelda, The Wand of Gamelon, and Zelda's Adventure. Many fans just assumed that, because the games are nowhere to be found on the official timeline, that they should be regarded as non-canon. However, if you look again more closely, you'll see that there are multiple omissions present in this official chronology that throw this line of thinking for a loop. First, besides the aforementioned CDI games, there's Link's crossbow training for the Wii. But they're not the only ones. Oh no. There's one game that should obviously be canon, yet is not anywhere in the Hyrule Historia. That's right, The Legend of Zelda for the Wii U. Clearly, this timeline is not complete. Not only that, but why even worry about what Nintendo thinks belongs on the timeline anyway? Triforce Heroes for the 3DS is a glorified fashion sim, yet official word has stated that this game is, in fact, canon, occurring directly after A Link Between Worlds. If this thing can be canon, then so can the frankly underrated CDI games. Besides, haven't you heard of Death of the Author? No. The CDI games are likely not included because they're unpopular, and including them in something official will be pretty controversial. But as anyone who's read the Japanese Super Mario Bros. Instruction booklet can attest, Miyamoto likes to hide his more controversial plot elements so that only dedicated fans, such as myself, can find the clues and deduce the meaning. We'll start by looking at the first two games in the CDI trilogy, The Faces of Evil and The Wand of Gamelon. In Link, The Faces of Evil, Ganon invades and takes over an island nation called Koridai. In order to stop Ganon, Link must conquer the levels on the islands, each represented by a face, thus the Faces of Evil. During his quest, he finds an artifact called the Book of Koridai, which, according to Ippo, holds the power to defeat Ganon. Sure enough, if the player can make it all the way to Ganon himself, throwing the Book of Koridai is enough to stop the evil tyrant. In Zelda, The Wand of Gamelon, another island nation, this time Gamelon, is under attack by Ganon. First, the King of Hyrule goes to the nation's aid, and when he does not return, Link is sent to look for him. When both of them fail to return, it's up to Zelda to take up the mantle of the hero and save Gamelon, along with the King and Link. Along the way, she obtains the titular artifact, the Wand of Gamelon, which again is said to have the power to defeat Ganon. Zelda eventually fights her way to Ganon himself and uses the wand to defeat him. Now, where could these games fit on the Zelda timeline? It's clear that Ganon has already been established in these games, so it has to take place after Ocarina of Time. It can't take place in the Twilight Realm branch because Ganondorf was executed early on, preventing his transformation into Ganon. It can't take place in the New World branch because the original Hyrule is flooded and the king is a boat, which, as you can tell, is a bit different from the king in Wand of Gamelon. So that leaves the Decline of Hyrule branch. But obviously, we're not done yet. Now we have to find out where in this branch the CDI games could fit. It can't be right after A Link to the Past, because the Oracle games are about failing to revive Ganon, meaning Ganon is dead during this time. Similarly, Ganon stays dead throughout Link's Awakening and the Adventure of Link. However, there is an interesting hole between A Link Between Worlds, or Triforce Heroes technically, and the original Legend of Zelda. In A Link Between Worlds, the villain Yuga wants to, like villains in the other games, revive Ganon. Unlike the Oracle game's Twinrova and the minions in the Adventure of Link, however, Yuga succeeds and even fuses with Ganon to obtain the Triforce of Power. Link, of course, ultimately defeats Yuga, so one would assume that means Ganon's defeated too, right? Wrong. The Legend of Zelda claims that Ganon invaded the kingdom with an army, which means that Ganon was alive before the start of the game. This must mean that Yuga's revival stuck, and Ganon was able to separate from Yuga and go on to formulate his own schemes. It is at this point, one where Ganon is alive for a prolonged period of time, yet not in enough power to rule the world, that we can safely place the Faces of Evil and the Wand of Gamelon. But how do these games fit with each other? Is one a sequel to the other? Looking at these games, it's clear that they are very similar in terms of gameplay, design, and even plot. It makes sense. Both games were developed and released simultaneously. What if, like their real-life releases, these two games took place at the same time? That's right, they're the fork in another branch in the Zelda chronology. On one side, Zelda, the Wand of Gamelon, where Zelda kills Ganon, saves the kingdom and Link, and the characters engage in a classic everybody laughs ending. On the other side is Link, the Faces of Evil, where Link traps Ganon in the Book of Korodai, merely delaying the inevitable hostile takeover that happens in The Legend of Zelda. This looks pretty good, but let's not forget one last loose end, Zelda's Adventure. The last of the Legend of Zelda games for the Philips CDI, where does it fit in the Zelda chronology? In Zelda's Adventure, Link is captured by Ganon, which can only happen during a point where, again, Ganon is alive. But since we already had a hard enough time finding one uninterrupted period where Ganon is alive and well, this can only work if we assume, naturally, that there is another split in the timeline. This time, the split takes place in the original Legend of Zelda. In one branch, Link succeeds at defeating Ganon, and his minions attempt to revive him in the Adventure of Link. In the other, Link fails to gather the pieces of the Triforce of Wisdom and is trapped by Ganon. Ganon likely doesn't kill Link because he is looking for the Triforce of Courage, which was revealed in the Adventure of Link to be on Link's person without him realizing it. In this timeline, Zelda is able to escape Ganon's imprisonment, likely with the help of Impa. Impa is not mentioned in Zelda's Adventure, leading us to conclude that Impa sacrificed herself to make sure that Ganon would not claim all three pieces of the Triforce. As for the piece of the Triforce of Wisdom that Link was supposed to collect, well, if you remember, it was Zelda herself who split the Triforce of Wisdom and hid the pieces in the first place. Zelda already knew where they were hidden and retrieved what pieces Link could not. But what about the parts in Zelda's Adventure about the Kingdom of Tolamak and the 7 Celestial Signs? Well, if you look in the instruction booklet for The Legend of Zelda, it takes place in, quote, a small kingdom, within Hyrule, but doesn't name the kingdom. Ergo, we can assume that Tolamak is the name of the kingdom where The Legend of Zelda and Zelda's Adventure take place. The 7 Celestial Signs are linked to bringing an Age of Darkness and an Age of Lightness to Tolamak depending on who obtains them. These signs can be likened to the 7 sages needed to form a seal in A Link to the Past, and the Dark World and Light World could be linked to the 7 signs as well. This would make sense, as Ganon may be trying to find a way to merge the Dark World and the Light World, as he was much more powerful in the Dark World. Zelda's successful collection of the 7 signs could have then formed another seal that banished Ganon to the Dark World. After finding their places in the Zelda chronology, we're left with not 3, not 4, but 5 timelines in the Legend of Zelda Multiverse. This seems accurate for a number of reasons. Besides the utterly incontrovertible evidence mentioned before, this version of the Zelda chronology leaves room for The Legend of Zelda on Wii U, taking place after Zelda's adventure after Ganon inevitably escapes his otherworldly prison. Without this sequel hook, where would the Wii U Zelda even fit? I mean, what are they gonna do? Revive Ganon again? How unoriginal. Though, I guess that's Nintendo for ya. Also, this timeline places Zelda's adventure next to Link's adventure, which just looks too perfect to not be correct. Lastly, there's the scientific fact that, as any smart person will tell you, the more convoluted a theory is, the more likely it is to be right. But hey, it's just a theory, just like evolution, general relativity, and plate tectonics. See ya next time.
Gee, it sure is boring around here.